Listening to voices, stories can be strange. It's good to open up to new stories and finding backstories of how people came to be, only to free the mind of what blinds us with only a glance gives us a chance to see people be who they truly are, from silent voices to shining light. Stories that inspire awareness and change. I welcome you to Jessi Stories, Unheard Voices. Hey everyone, welcome to Jessi Stories. This is an inclusive space, so if you're part of LGBTQIA+, or autistic, or ADHD, so disabled, or queer community, this is a safe space where I know there's spots on the internet that are not right now. So if you're here, thanks so much for being here. Everyone is welcome. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to help the algorithm. And today I am happy to have on Andrew. If you would introduce yourself. Tell everyone what you do.
Hi, Jessi. Just want to first say thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I've been looking forward to this. But yeah, for people who do not know me, yes, I am a cult survivor, podcaster, and digital creator. And I was raised in a religious cult known as the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement. And I was homeschooled in that my entire life with the intent of being in that environment the rest of my life. And growing up believing I was in this special chosen group that had all the answers and everyone in the outside world was evil and lost. And as I got older, I always felt different growing up and eventually realized that I was gay, and that was just an abomination in that environment. And so I was told, well, one of the things I was taught was, you will never be unhappy if you follow our teachings or follow our way. You will get the results that we are telling you you're going to get. And if you don't, that is your fault. So I didn't see the results of their teachings or of their environment. And I began just a slow journey of questioning, and that began with my sexuality and struggles with mental health issues, and then learning about religious trauma. And there was this extreme conflict of when I began questioning the fear of like, what is going to happen to me? Am I going down this destructive path and a path to hell where I'll never truly be safe? So there was so much indoctrinated fear of questioning, of leaving. And so I ended up at a cult college named Bob Jones University, kind of as a way to get out, and we can dig into that later. But I continued the question, and eventually I was expelled or really excommunicated from that environment for speaking out about my experiences being gay and just a trauma. And since then, I've just been very vocal about the impact of just cultic control, being gay in that kind of environment, and giving a voice to other survivors. The first podcast I did about Bob Jones is called Surviving Bob Jones University, and that's a limited series that is out right now. And I continue telling people stories from that school and its affiliated ministries in my current podcast called Beyond BJU. And yeah, I mean, I've just been healing and processing out loud for the past several years. It's a different way to do it. When I was excommunicated, I went out running and yelling and like and I look back on it and I was like, wow, I never had a voice growing up. And so to be able to use my voice and share what I thought and felt and what I experienced was just so empowering and freeing for me. And so I want to do that for other people. And that's why I got into the podcasting world, because language is so powerful. And when we can find language that describes what we experienced, we can really find tools and things to set us on a path of recovery and know that we're not alone.
Yeah, that is so true and very powerful too, Nick, especially when you do come out. because you're relearning how to exist in the world. At
Yes.
least from my own experience, you're relearning what actually is, I guess, right versus wrong versus it's
Mm,
okay, this gray area. It doesn't have to be so black and white, but yeah, you really are pretty much like a toddler again, relearning how to walk. And it's sometimes not steady, sometimes each step takes a little while. I like the way you've said that. That's very true. I know it's me just talking to others, period, whether it's cult experience or just queer or both or just one or the other or disabled. Just hearing every single person's perspective and experience helps me personally, at least, understand myself better, understand my own experiences within the cult before entering the cult, and helps me honestly write my memoir too. But yeah,
yeah,
uh,
no, yeah, I agree 100%, and yeah, I mean, it's empowering because you're creating community through sharing these stories, and people know that, "Oh, I'm not alone," and it is such a lonely experience to come out of that environment feeling so behind, like you were saying, just on so many things, having to grow, and, like, there are times I'm so hard on myself, and I'm like, "Why can't I just be like this or do this yet?" But just kind of learn to give myself grace as I'm yeah, on this journey.
so true. That's very important. And then can you explain what Independent Fundamental Baptist IFB movement stands for and what it is, its function?
Yes. Yes, yes. So, yeah, the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement, and I'll refer to it going forward as IFB because it is just a mouthful to say so long. But yeah, so the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement. Yeah, so it's interesting because there's two people kind of involved with it. The first person, J. Frank Norris, he kind of started it a little like he's not people give him some credit because they just don't want to ignore him, but he wasn't successful with starting the movement. So he started independent Baptist churches in the 1930s, and they didn't really take off until the 1950s with Jack Hyles. But Jack Hyles, he is the one that everyone attributes. I'll just say he's the one that made the independent fundamental Baptist movement popular, and he made it just blow up and expand. But to understand the IFB, I think it's important to understand really just fundamentalism in general. So in the 1920s, there was just a major reaction in Christianity to modernism, to evolution, to just things being taught in public schools. And so there were different Christians that saw this as a threat to their religion. So they were like, no, like you're attacking the fundamentals of Christianity, like a literal interpretation of the Bible. You're attacking the creation story, which they saw as the truth. And oh, you're introducing ideas outside of our belief system. So we are just harping down on our beliefs. And we're also just going to create our own schools. And it's important to note, too, that racism is also a big part of fundamentalism starting. So in the 1920s, Bob Jones Sr., which we'll get into Bob Jones University later, he created this doctrine of separation. And there is a book coming out soon called Clandamentalism by Dr. Camille Lewis, who is a big part of the Surviving BJU podcast happening because of just all the research and documentation that she's done. But yeah, so there's a doctrine of separation, but I always think in my mind, doctrine of segregation. And it was just about this worry also about the races intermixing. So let's separate from these other races, other people, create our own insular worlds and indoctrinate future generations into our ideals. And so with that kind of as just a light, I know like already there a lot to unpack, but with that kind of as a base level of understanding. So again, there's that fear of difference, fear of the outside world, fear of anything outside of our belief system. And so with the independent fundamental Baptist movement, it was a reaction to what these different people, men and like pastors saw as people straying away from the truth, even in Baptist denomination. So the IFB is not really a denomination. People call it a movement. Some people call it a sect. I call it a cult because of the control and manipulation and coercion. And a lot of the survivors call it a cult too. But so it started in the 19 or became popular in the 1950s with Jack Hyles. And so it's just so interesting how in these groups it's like, no, you're not doing it good enough. You're not doing it right. So we're breaking away from you and creating our own thing. And so with the independent part, there is no authority or board or denomination board holding them accountable. They can do whatever they want. There's no checks and balances. And I think that's one of the dangerous things about the movement. An interesting thing about the independent part is, yes, I see that as they are independent from accountability or oversight. But these churches, in the beginning, before I learned more about it, I thought that each church was more island unto itself. But as I've learned more and more, that's not true. All these different IFB churches, like they're a whole network. I've heard Eric Skwarczynski, who hosts the Preacher Boys podcast about the movement, just talking about how it's this big boys network and how they all help each other out. And so just kind of, well, I guess what makes it different, I guess, from other denominations too, is they claim that the King James Version of the Bible is the only legitimate word of God, and all other versions of the Bible are false, are tainted by Satan. So they claim this access to an exclusive truth through this version of the Bible. Sorry, I'm going to quickly just pause for a second, look at my notes so I don't go way off track because I know there's so much I could talk about it and there's a lot. So I'm just going to look. So yeah, so they started as a reaction to modernism and they sought to create an environment based on their fundamentalist beliefs and isolating themselves from broader society and establishing their own churches, schools, and literature. So when you get involved in the movement, it's not just a part of your life, it becomes your entire life. And so they create this very insular environment where you're at this church cult that's where your friends are there, your family is there. A lot of IFB churches even have Christian schools. So within the movement, parents put their kids in either a Christian school that is IFB or you homeschool your kids, and anything else is just giving your child over to Satan. So there is so much fear of going outside of anything that they did and fear of the outside world and influence. And with the IFB, they took the separation part to another level with separating from all other Christians who believe differently from them. Like they really believe that they're the only ones that are right and everyone else is wrong. So yeah, so that separation from other Christians is called secondary separation. And a big part of the movement growing is called soul winning. Yes, I know yeah, soul winning, winning souls for Christ. It is their form of evangelism. So the IFB is so big on numbers. So the IFB church cult I grew up in, there were boards on each side of the auditorium where it had the numbers of each bus that would come in. So the bus ministry is greatly associated with the IFB of sending buses out into the area and bringing people in. So it was all about keeping up like, oh, how many numbers can we get? How many people can we get saved? And so with the IFB, I do have a list, let me find it, so I was asking AI, I'm like, what is the difference between the IFB and other mainstream denominations? So the first I talked about was church autonomy. So they're independent from a board, whereas mainstreams have a denomination. The IFB has a very strict literal interpretation and they reject modern theological interpretations, where mainstream Baptists might allow for historical and contextual interpretations. The IFB is exclusively King James, and other denominations are open to that. And the IFB is all about separation from even other Christian denominations. So don't associate with Catholics or charismatics or any other kind of people, anyone that strays away from the IFB. Whereas mainstream Baptists may engage in interfaith dialogue. The IFB is very legalistic. They often enforce very rigid moral codes, dress standards, control around entertainment, and then very controlling around gender roles, whereas more mainstream Baptists may allow for personal conviction over rules. So yeah, IFB is all about door-to-door evangelism, revival meetings, and very like fire and brimstone, fear-based teachings, where mainstream Baptists, they also value evangelism, but they might not be as much focused on that. And And it's interesting because what Baptists talk are known for is about grace through faith alone. So, for example, you're saved and going to heaven through believing in Jesus Christ, and that only alone could save you. And so a lot of people and that's called eternal security. That's another doctrine. Once you're saved, you're always saved. But the IFB is very deceptive about that. It's through grace. If they were really honest about what they teach, they would say through grace, through faith alone, as long as you believe and act and follow our rules exactly as we do. There's this assumption that if you're truly saved, you will be just like us and believe just like us because we are right and everyone else is wrong. And so, very legalistic, very deceiving about that, and a lot. But yeah, so they create this very insular world and it's all about getting the family in. So very family-based kind of environment. So homeschooling is known throughout the movement. There's all kinds of homeschool curriculums. I grew up on a Becca. Bob Jones had their own curriculum. But yeah, I'm gonna stop there just for a second. I don't know if you have questions or anything else you wanted to ask about. It's a lot, I
Well,
know.
first, I wanted to do kind of a comparison, especially with the exclusiveness. At least that seems to be a trend in every cult. At least Twin Flames Universe, they definitely were exclusive to certain invites of certain people. At least that they do combine a bunch of religions into one. That's what they do. They do
Mm,
Buddhist, Christianity,
interesting.
Catholic. What else is in theirs? They grab from all over the place. Like even some of their mantras that they do in the Church of Union, in my personal opinion, they just take directly from if you were to go to like a Buddhist church or because I have gone to a Buddhist church like twice. But yeah, I think that's interesting that each cult, in my personal opinion, chooses the way they I guess, exclusively want to take things, just like for Twin Flames Universe. Yes, there are queer people in there. There's not as many. There's more straight white females, at least when I was there. I can only speak from when I was there. And there's just less diversity. Like you have one person that's not white at most every so often. Maybe you'll get a couple more from India. A lot of the people that are in India, at least at Twin Flames Universe, are working really hard and you rarely see them. If you do, they're like assistants or
Mm,
kind of in your role. Some of them are. I know there's like 4 or 5 that are actual coaches currently, but that's because of years of being assistants and working for free
oh,
in my personal experience of seeing it happen. But I just wanted to do a little comparison of that. And you did a really good job explaining that too. You did a little bit of the beliefs. Oh, what were things you were taught being homeschooled with
yeah, I
the
mean, do you mind if we dig into the beliefs more? Because I could dig some into that if you're fine with
yeah,
that.
definitely. What are
Yeah.
their beliefs and practices?
Yeah. So for people who the IFB is very similar to the Institute of Basic Life Principles for people who have seen the Shiny Happy People documentary and are familiar with the Duggars. And it's interesting because it's not talked about as much, but the Duggars are involved with the IBLP, but they were also grew up independent fundamental Baptist also, which not people don't talk about as much. But yeah, they have very strict rules. I think I want to emphasize what I didn't emphasize before is strict rules around like gender roles. Everyone has a specific role that is designed by God, and if you do not follow out that role, danger is going to happen. And in the IFB, Christian nationalism is also all throughout it. So, believing that the US is a nation chosen by God and meant to have those beliefs in the government. And so in the IFB, it was always talked about how the world was just growing more and more evil and would grow more and more hostile towards us because we told the truth and that's why they hated us. And so the only way to really save our country from destruction was which is awful that has actually happened
Yeah,
now, it's
a
actually
little bit.
happened, is to get a president that would enforce these religious right conservative values and that in they've been working towards it for decades and many survivors me and so many others have tried to be warning people like talking about our own experiences the impact and what they want to do and what that life really looks like by showing them like this is what it looks like in their world in their insular environment and they want to take this to the big level and Yeah, so Christian nationalism is has been something they've always been trying to get involved with politics, and really it's always been about power, wanting to have power, and it is really terrifying to see how the religious right has finally gotten what they wanted, and thankfully it is, even though it's been, not gonna lie, it's been horrible the last few months, seeing that growing up in that, leaving that, hearing them talk about it, and then seeing it unfold. But it's also been good to see the people that are coming together, I think, too, and that are speaking out about it still. And I think some things that can still kind of maybe stop him from certain things, but it's still so, so scary to see.
Well, the
Yeah,
immunity, they have the power to do it. They need to take
yeah.
away the immunity, and then
Yes, yes,
that's
goodness.
all it takes. And I agree with everyone who is fighting and has been fighting. I do it in my own way through social media, but
Yeah,
they literally have the power. They're just not using it. There's a difference,
yeah.
including the other side. That's why I don't say I'm an independent in general when it comes to
Oh,
politics. I'm
got you.
openly just gonna say that I'm independent. I don't go based off of anything except, I would say, honesty for someone who is in that position. I go based off of, and vibes. Vibe
Yeah.
check is pretty important to
Yeah,
me.
that is, no, I get that. I vibe check people a lot. Yes. They don't always pass, but yeah.
Yeah, with the current
Ooh,
admin, because I don't want to name names.
yeah.
At least with them, none of them checked out, and they all were huge red flags from the very beginning, even running, and even
Yeah,
having dealt being double in a cult, I guess, when I was in a cult in
yeah.
2020. And through that time period, which most of it is blank with when that person was in office, but now it's all coming back to me because I guess some things are on repeat and aren't new that are
Mm,
happening right now, and some
yeah,
things are new. And then they also have fun saying we're in a crisis when we're not.
yeah.
You really
No,
bring fear, so both sides are honestly bringing fear. There isn't one side that's not.
exactly. Yeah,
Instead of logic of, "Hey, so this is happening," and I keep telling everyone around me, "You have to pay attention to the little wins no matter what, because justice takes, sadly, time, and
yeah,
they are building something that we don't know about, and
yeah,
that takes time.
mm,
How long? Who knows? But it takes
yeah.
time."
Goodness, yeah,
Yeah, that's what that brought up. And also the whole male, female, whole gender roles. Twin Flames universe does exactly the same thing on gender roles. So you have divide feminine, divide masculine. And yes, it's true, all Twin Flames places do it. That is true, but they also force it. So
Oh
there's a
my god.
difference. It's you're exploring, in my personal opinion, to, oh, you're still not accepting this. Like for me, I got the whispering behind, well, in settings like this of, well, he's not ready for this. No,
Mm,
I'm she. Thank you. Get my pronouns correct. So I
mm,
definitely know how it feels to be in someone who is trans
mm,
footsteps because of that experience of getting misgendered and
mm.
being
I'm
forced
sorry.
to stay misgendered and forced to, yeah, be something you're not. But anyway,
Yeah, that's no, I'm sorry you went through that. That's hard.
it was a good experience to learn from and to
Mhm,
see the red flags that
yeah.
a lot of those that are still in there. I hope they see those red flags because they're much bigger now than they were then.
Yeah, and, like, it is hard going back, like, when you get out to see other people that are still in there and, like, you want to help them live a better life, and it can be so hard to watch, kind of like those mixed feelings, I think, especially for me, like, as I left, it was like, "Oh, all those people that are still in that environment, but still like, oh, I need to save myself from this." Just yeah, it's a hard journey.
It is. I hope that someday, at least, since we do have a lot of, at least females right now, doing a lot of research in coercion,
Yeah.
gaslighting. So we have Dr. C, well, Dr. Christina. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but she's awesome. She's doing coercive control, but it's with adults and children, and she also works within the court system. So if anyone needs an expert, she teaches experts, so she'll probably put you in the right direction. And then Dr. Robin Stern, gaslighting. Then we have Dr. Lalich, cults. We do have a lot of researchers out there actually researching. Dr. Robin Stern, I know, is more emotional intelligence. And like I said, for Dr. C, she's more of courts, adults, and children, but it's still coercion and still applies. She still does studies within the cult like setting. So she makes a good expert for anyone who's in a cult, out of a cult, and wants to take them to court. she's also good to have for expert-wise, just saying.
Yeah, no,
But
no,
anyway,
yeah, yeah, it is great to have these people coming out and talk. Yeah, yeah, I was looking at your channel. I need to see the interview with Dr. C. I'm excited for that.
that actually posted today.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah, I highly recommend watching it and sharing it with friends because she's a good one to get more out there. She's the first person I've learned that's doing actual studies and real life research
Mm,
on coercive control and has been doing it for a long time. Yeah, she's cool. I really like her and connect with her quickly. But yeah, okay. And she's straight too, and a straight well, a queer ally. She talked
oh,
about
I love
someone
that.
else who was on her podcast, which is something pray. Yes, you
Maybe.
got it. Perfect pray.
Okay. Uh,
But yeah, I highly recommend that one too. She's just really, really smart. So she does say a lot of big words. For me personally, at least my autism, I don't know all
yeah.
big words. So when people say big words, like Amanda Montel did that on this too, I don't know all big words. I might look like someone who does, but I don't.
Oh,
But all right, that just made me really excited. All right, our next one is what things were you taught being homeschooled in
yeah,
IFB?
yeah, so I was homeschooled K through 12, used through a curriculum called Abeka, and it is produced at a Pensacola Christian college, which is a very known IFB college in the movement. And the founders of the college actually graduated from Bob Jones University. And anyways, we'll get to more Bob Jones at the end. It's just this again, just showing all the connections between these different groups and how they're interconnected and influencing. But yeah, so the homeschooling, which is another level of indoctrinations of IFB teachings. So with the IFB, they're all about preserving the past. They really love this 1950s wife staying home, cooking, cleaning, submitting to her husband, the dad working, the children playing their own, boys being masculine, girls being feminine, how they define that. And just trying to, because they talk a lot in the movement about the family unit, and they have the right way. So if you just follow these gender roles. So wait, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so there's one way to be. You follow these roles, and so then that is influence for all the curriculum across all the board. And so with the Becca, they teach that evolution is false. It is scientific. They teach it is scientifically like incorrect, and like they will bring up maybe things in science, but they'll think they debunk it or they say, oh, basically anything that goes outside their literal interpretation of the Bible is just not true. Is definitely like very, very biased and tries to instill very conservative values. And like my thing is like it's fine learning. Well, the thing with indoctrination is that you're not given the other viewpoint. You're taught there's one way, and so I think it's fine to teach some differing viewpoints, but that was just not that did not happen for me growing up. It was like, these are the answers. This is the way to be. Anything outside of this is of Satan and will destroy our country. So there is this kind of this impending doom that was happening that if we did not get on this track or instill these values, the country would fall apart again. And so sorry, I thought again, it's all good. So the Bible is infiltrated throughout all of the subjects. So I did learn regular subjects like math, spelling, English, science, humanities, all these different things, but it's from that IFB lens and really being trained to have an answer for everything, any countering viewpoint, anyone else who believed differently. And growing up, looking back, like anyone or anything that went against what we believed, it was like my mind or my thoughts would just kind of like just shut down, just like retreat, pull away. And so, yeah, so Bible memorization was a big part of it. As I got older, like learning more theological things, I remember at 17 years old, one semester doing an Beck book. on just learning for a semester about the book of Revelation, learning about signs of the end times and the different seals and revelation and yeah, so that kind of scary stuff too in that. But yeah, so just a continuation of IFB teachings and the world and their values, but just infiltrated in whatever way they could throughout even in math, they would have Bible verses and things throughout the textbooks, just any way they could fit it in. I'm sorry, I can't oh, sorry, your sound cut out for a sec.
Sorry, the whole Bible memorizing doesn't sound fun to me
No.
personally. That sounds
No,
really
it's not
boring.
yeah, it's not fun, no.
No, but yeah. And then when did you realize your queer identity?
Yeah, so as I got older, like, I always felt different, and I tried so hard to fit into the role or the way of being that they wanted, and I felt like, "Oh, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?" And kept trying so hard, and it was around, like, 16 years old that I had noticed some kind of feelings and attractions for the same gender, and it was actually at the group's yearly youth conference they would do and for people who don't know what that is, so in the movement, they're known for different conferences, and youth conferences is one of them. Different IFB churches will travel to an IFB church that's hosting a youth conference, and it's usually like a week long, maybe best way to describe it is like a youth revival almost. And you are there, and yeah, it's usually, yeah, it was a week long, and there's usually like 3 services a day, and it's very teen focused. So in the movement, purity was a thing that was emphasized so much, especially sexual purity. So saving sex for marriage and not like LGBTQ plus people, just an abomination. Like you were just a horrible, awful person. Like there were so many like teachings about gay people deserving to die of AIDS and the they love to talk about the Sodom and Gomorrah story a lot, which they take out of context, but that's a whole other area. So there is so much fear and hatred of gay people, and I mainly heard the term sodomite growing up. I don't think I really heard the term like gay people. So like very hateful, very bigoted, and so that was sorry.
That means what does sodomite mean?
Well, thank you for asking that. Yeah, so with this story of Sodom and Gomorrah, long story short, they teach that God destroyed this city of Sodom and Gomorrah because they were gay, basically. And so yeah, so with like sodomy, so basically like gay sex. So it's a very derogatory term, dehumanizing term that reduces someone to just one thing and it's never used usually in a positive light. But yeah, sodomite, yeah, it has its origins, yeah, from the Bible and that story. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah, that helps explain. So it's pretty much put in simple terms, like bad because it's two people that are of the same sex having sex.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, so yeah, it's so that was the term that I heard, and my sexuality was a big catalyst for me questioning, but when I realized it so at this youth conference where all IFB youth were getting together, hearing all these different IFB youth pastors and pastors talk about purity and, like, not drinking alcohol, not listening to rock music, just trying to reinforce more control and fear over us as we're getting older and we're normal human beings having normal human desires, but that environment tried so hard to get rid of your humanity so much. Any emotions or feelings, like, outside what they wanted, just, like, cutting that off and getting rid of it. Die to self is a common phrase I heard a lot, like, "You need to die to self, die to self, die to self." So, getting rid of anything in you that does not align with them, just breaking you down. And so, at this youth conference, it was, I think, in the one in 2016, that I ended up having strong romantic feelings with someone of the same gender, and it was so confusing to me because I was taught a very specific version of what gay people are like. And so growing up, it taught that they're evil, they're awful, they're child rapists, blah, blah, whatever, like this very awful view. And I'm like, oh, like I'm having these romantic or these emotional, strong feelings. And because of my indoctrination, there's, of course, an internal struggle and there was shame, guilt, and there was a lot of trauma, mental health issues. I fell into a deep, deep depressive episode and was just like praying and begging. And I believe that, oh, if I don't change my sexuality, that God is going to kill me. Like that's what I really believed. Like I was made to be so afraid of that. And so after that moment of figuring that out, trying so hard to pray and pray and pray, I began kind of on a journey of like, can I be like both of these things, or do I need to leave? And it really made me question like, oh, well, if they're wrong about this, what else are they wrong about? And that kind of started me on that journey. So I'll stop there for now.
Well, that's good. At least it started you on that journey. I
Yeah.
know with me, I had always known, but at least for me, it was family. That's a Christian Catholic family I grew up in. And my grandma, at least, was the number one person who said, "You're going to go to hell if you love someone of the same sex." My grandpa
Mm,
has, was always very loving no matter what. But she was the main one that I guess indoctrinated that idea in my head before even going into Twin Flames
mm,
universe. Because with them, they at least indoctrinated the idea, in my personal opinion, that in order for you to be accepting in society as a queer person, you must play either the male or female role. That was
mm.
mainly it, by doing divine
Wow.
masculine, divine feminine. So you must play this role if you are gonna be accepted in society. And I thought, "Wow, that makes it easier for me." For me, at least, I thought that
Yeah.
was great at the time.
Mm,
But as soon as I got out, I've gotten a little more. I haven't experienced a lot of queer culture besides actually talking to others and going to
mm.
2 pride events so far.
Yeah.
That's been my extent so far. But, yeah, also being autistic makes it harder to go out and socialize sometimes. But I get most of my socializing here and at work.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, do whatever feels right to you at your own pace. Again, taking those baby steps and being true. I think being true to you and who you are is so important. And I think at times I've noticed that even coming out of that cultic environment, trying to find another role or thing to conform to because it can be very hard to discover and learn about yourself, but it can also be, I think, very exciting.
Yes, fully agree with that. Well, you already covered that one. Oh, sure. Once you figured out your sexuality, how did that
Sorry, I say that
affect
again. The sound cut out a little bit.
sorry. How did you once you figured out your sexuality, and I don't know if you accept it at this point, like, in the cult, how did you view IBF?
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, how did, yeah, my sexuality change my view on the IFB?
Yes.
Yeah, so with when it started me on that journey of questioning of, "Oh, if they're wrong about this, what else are they wrong about?" Because the system cannot stand on its own. That's why they hide you from the outside world, restrict information, the people you're around, okay, and indoctrinate you to just never question or to fear questioning that questioning is of Satan and doubting is of Satan. Because once you pull one, it's like the stack of cards, you pull one card out, it just all falls apart and does not work. And so as I've been writing my own memoir, which I'm excited to read yours when it gets
Mm.
published. I'm excited for that.
I
I
wanna read
know.
yours when it comes out too.
Oh, thank you. As I've been writing it, it's this inspiration came to me a few days ago and I started recording it and it's like the environment works for you until it doesn't. And so it's this realization at first, like before I could process more of the environment I was in as I've been writing my memoir as a child, there was this very young age, there's this sense of gratefulness of, "Oh, I'm in this environment that is keeping me safe from the outside, evil, awful world, and I'm so glad to be a part of God's chosen, and I'm going to heaven, and I'm so glad I'm not a part of the world that's all gonna go to hell, and that God is gonna destroy and burn the world one day, and I won't be a part of that." But then I know that's so much as a child to believe that, but and then as I got older and started realizing these things, starting to realizing that, oh, what they're wrong about some things, what else are they wrong about? And even starting to feel like maybe I don't want to be a part of this, realizing that, oh, like I'm trapped. Like that was such a hard feeling because I think there are a lot of people that they're in their own cages, but they don't realize it. And I feel like that is a part of a cultic experience is when you're so indoctrinated, you don't realize you're trapped. And I love Dr. Yanya Lalage's bounded choice theory so much because when I read her theory after getting out, like you are psychologically bound in this environment. And once I began to wake up to that, this place that I saw as a safe haven from a young age and then getting older and realizing, oh, this is a trap. Like I'm trapped in this. This is something's not always having not having the language then, but being like, "Something's wrong with this. Something doesn't feel right about this." And there were even moments throughout my childhood that there were intuitive feelings that came up that were, like, shoved away or shoved down 'cause I interpreted that as Satan making me question. So, yeah, so it changed my view of it from this safe haven to this trap and to something that was thinking, "Oh, there's something's wrong with this. This could be harmful."
Yeah, at least that's good that came up to help at least start
Yeah.
the process, hopefully, of getting out. How did you end up Bob Jones University?
Wow, yeah, so in the IFB world, for the men, it is expected that they go to an IFB college to either become like a pastor or just some kind of male-based role or learn some trade. And for me, and also like it's known in the IFB for going to these colleges to find a partner. And so for women, they would have degrees for them that taught them just how to be a submissive wife, to be a homemaker, and I know it's
That's so
awful.
gross.
It is disgusting, yeah,
Yeah,
and but for me, growing up, I was always a dreamer, and, like, I kept a lot of those things to myself, like imagination and, like, growing up in that, like, you were not allowed to have, like, dreams or ambitions. That was worldly. That wasn't allowed. That's what the outside world people wanted to do. Like, you don't have dreams, you don't have ambitions, you obey. Obedience was such a core part of that environment. Just obey, obey, obey. And so for me, though, I was like, I have dreams, I have ambitions. And for me, like I wanted there's just something in me that like there's more to this. There's more. There's more to life than following this rote, black and white, rigid, stagnant, like there's more. And so as I was looking at different colleges, Bob Jones University was they are not affiliated with the IFB. They are their own thing. And I say that because some people call them as part of the IFB, but they do not take the KJV only stance. So for me, like they're automatically like excommunicated from any association for the movement because of that. But I wanted a college that had an array or a variety of different career options to choose from. And I was like, is that possible in the fundamentalist college world? And Bob Jones was that rare, I think, college that did have all kinds of different careers to choose from. But of course, they still had their indoctrination throughout the programs. But when I looked at them, I was like, oh, like they have so many different options. And for me, what drew me to Bob Jones was one of the ways that IFB keeps you trapped in their system is at their different colleges, they're not legitimate accreditation. So you really cannot get hired outside of their network or world. And so I was like, if I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna have to get a college degree that is accredited where I can work in the outside world, and so Bob Jones was actually shockingly accredited. They actually got their accreditation. They had gotten it revoked like decades before because of a Supreme Court case about banning interracial dating and marriage, which that's a whole other thing. So they finally got their accreditation back in 2017. So I went to Bob Jones, not really wanting to go to a fundamentalist college, but seeing it as a way out of I can get out of this environment. If I go do this for 4 years, get this accredited degree, and I can go in the outside world, and I also just wanted to get from under the control of my parents, just growing up in that my entire life under my parents' authority, very much controlled, just wanting some kind of freedom, and so, yeah, I saw Bob Jones as a way out, even and people at times slam me because, "Oh, like, you're gay and you went to Bob Jones," but it was for me, it was looking back, I was in a double bind. It was either stay in the IFB or go to some fundamentalist college. That's what I felt like my options were at that time.
Well, that's understandable. I know with me, that my majority was online, so even though the current gurus slash cult leaders claim that you can just close your computer, well, you have your cell phone, and I believe most people use your cell phones a lot
Yeah.
and carry them everywhere, so you technically have them everywhere.
Yes.
Like, I would get alerted constantly on my phone by them. Yes, you can turn off your phone, but then you get behind on whatever the alleged cult is doing, and then you have to catch up, and you'll get chewed out if you don't. But, yeah, I understand that feeling of stuck, because with me, it was always,
Yeah.
"Oh gosh," I'd actually turn off my phone sometimes to try to give myself a break from it, but as soon as I turned it on, because I had so many roles within the community,
Yeah.
I had to catch up and I'd get chewed out, whether it was by the gurus themselves or I would get chewed out by other community members. So
100%.
after a while, I stopped turning off my phone unless it was nighttime, which that became an actual rule at some point within the group of only turn it off if
Mhm.
you're sleeping or if you're sick. Those
Yeah.
were the only 2 reasons to do that.
Mm.
So yes, people do use computer. We did that for Zoom, but you could also do Zoom on your phone. So, people know that I did do a whole little actual YouTube content of explaining that the first people that actually did it was I don't remember the cult's name, but they were obsessed with aliens and that
Oh,
aliens were gonna do something. You can still see their site today, and I put the site in the description of I'll try to find it and put it up here in the little interview portion of what we're doing, but they've been around. So online cults have existed
right.
since the 1980s. So it's been around for a pretty long time. It's not a new thing. What TFU is doing is not new, and what other people are doing, even if it's
Yeah.
political or otherwise, you don't have to be a religion to be a cult. I wish people understood that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and kinda like saying to what you're talking about, like, people need to learn so much more about coercion because it's so frustrating to hear the blaming and the shaming of, "Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that?" But, like, the psychological hold and the manipulation and indoctrination is just so deep. It's just you are psychologically trapped, and I feel like too that's why I love Dr. Lodge's Bounded Choice is it really explains that it's not this black and white do or don't do. It's you're psychologically bound.
I still need to read her book, but I have such a big list, but
No,
she's
I
one
get
I
it.
still have
Yeah.
to read at least that one. I read
Yeah.
Take Back My Life. I did read that in both listening form and physical reading form. But yeah. But I'm happy that we also have, which I hope Dr. Lalich works with Dr. C because they could honestly do a lot of good. And I
Mhm.
would hope that being those who work within emotional intelligence, coercion, cults, and ex-members ourselves, it would be cool if we
Mhm.
could all come together instead of all separately having, like, I know a little bit culty still exists, stuff like that. Instead of all doing that, if we could all come together, bring our own
Yeah.
experiences, add to the research of what they're already doing.
Mhm. Yeah.
If we could do that, that would honestly be good because then there is more facts versus this is a theory versus
Yes.
like there is facts with Dr. C, there is facts with Dr. Robin Stern. They have facts, they have factual data. And with Dr. Lalich, I know she has some facts, but I also know she has theories that haven't been tested yet too, right? Or am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I yeah, so is her bounded choice model, she's done research for that. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but yeah, she did her dissertation and her research into that. Um,
Good to know. That makes me wanna read it more, but I do think I still stand strongly on that we should all come together because every cult that people have been in, we have something in common no matter what within the
mhm,
cult teaching itself. And
mhm,
if we could bring that data together instead of just sharing it widely on podcasts, which is great, and on YouTube,
mhm,
which is great, getting the word out there, but it's still hard to get it out there. If we could get that factual data for those that pay attention to data and somehow get it on a larger scale, that would be great. And
yeah,
if we could get I know one of my goals personally, that's why I hope to work with Dr. C myself, is to try to get into law in all 50 states, even the red states, coercion law of not just like which I know Dr. C has a very similar vision to me. I didn't know that
mm,
until she announced it on her IG, but to have in the court system. Like Australia has at least an abusive relationship. It would be great if we had it not only child, adult, 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 but in group setting law wise. It's just how that
mhm,
would look and how we could figure that looking. I've been actually writing it down for myself to try to figure out a definition of how that can look in 3 different ways
yeah.
and how the court system can do that. I actually have a video coming out that's YouTube content, podcast content in about next Saturday. That just goes over coercion, and I already know how each state goes into law that way,
Oh,
but I
wow.
wanna make a template, and I wanna hear from people that are interested in taking part in this in whatever state they're in and trying to make this a reality because it's gonna take a lot of people, and even though I'm
Yeah,
not that big, I hope to get bigger, at least on YouTube and through my podcasts, so I can reach more people that hopefully are interested in changing the system to help, like, truly help
yeah,
those who are survivors/victims slash victims of whether it's a cult, whether it's a one-on-one cult,
yeah,
abusive relationship of any kind,
yeah,
have a way out. Because right now we don't, and we need to
yeah,
get that. The only way of doing it, which, yes, all cults, alleged or not, do something illegal, but
yeah,
regardless of that we also need to have a safeguard, which we don't have, and children especially too, which
yeah.
that's what I also like about Dr. C's work. She does that with children. Actually, Dr. Robin Stern also works with kids too, but yeah.
Yes, yeah, and, like, what I love too, Dr. Lalich has a book, Escaping Utopia, which I love because I think children and cults is also something not covered a lot for those of us who grew up in that is very difficult. But yeah, back to what you're talking about, the coercion stuff. Yes, that is a commonality between all these groups, and for so long because I love that you emphasize too that not all cults are religious. And that is definitely true because some people can get out of religious cults and, like, get involved in another cult that has no religious beliefs at all, and so it's I think that's why putting the safeguards of coercion, learning about coercion in education is so important to protect ourselves from this, so yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing to work towards that, that's inspiring.
Well, thank you. And
Of
I'm gonna
course.
try to bring other ex members aboard too that choose to be a part of this
Yeah.
in whatever state they're in, because I know everyone's in different states. And helping with templates. It's a thought process that I've only announced so far and only written. Like I said, I want to make a clear definition because that's what each state will need a clear definition
Yeah.
of what coercion is, why it's important, why they should care, and actual data. So Dr. C has data, Dr. Robin Stern has data, and I guess Dr. Lalich would have data, right? At least when it
Mhm.
comes
Yeah.
to bounded choice.
Yes.
So getting data from each of them too.
Yeah, and, like, she's interviewed a lot I think she interviewed, like, over 40 children from cults too, yeah, so she has her own research that she's definitely has done, yes.
Then I need to
A
read
lot.
both books too, because
Yeah,
I need to part of getting this ready for everyone is having data available already, so the only work they have to do is sending it to their representative in state and
mhm,
asking it to become law, and then representative presenting it in whatever state they're in to
yeah,
whoever their governor or whatever they
mm,
are. I guess governor, because that's part of the process, so it goes through their court systems too, and eventually to the person who signs it that plays the role of president in that state.
yeah,
But, yeah, I did my research. I've been researching this a while,
that's great.
Just like I know Dr. Lalich is doing coercion stuff, which I'll write some articles still, and I actually have the interview, which she said I can send to you anyways if I do coercive stuff and
Oh,
that you
yeah.
can figure out what to do with it.
Oh,
So you'll have
oh, it's
stuff
funny.
being sent your way.
Yeah, thank now, yeah, I'm curious to look at that.
Definitely. Yeah. And thought that was important to bring up since we all are on the same, I guess,
Yes,
experience and
yes,
can add to data and can add to helping wherever we need to help, honestly.
yeah.
But Bob Jones University.
Yeah, yeah, so with Bob Jones University, here I am, I'm going from an already high control environment really, like, right into another, and at first it did kind of certain aspects, I guess, felt more freeing not being under my parents, but there were still other aspects of control. So, when you go to the college, you're not allowed to live off campus unless you're 23 or older. And they make that rule because I know most of their college students are 18 to 22 that are attending. And so you're forced to live on this campus, and they do that because they have this high control system in the dormitories, in the dorms where you live. And there's this hierarchy of leadership in each dorm. So at the top, there is a dorm supervisor. Then underneath, there is the dorm mentor. And then on every single floor, there is a residence hall assistant. And then when you're in the dorms, you are part of what they call discipleship groups, which meet several nights a week. That happened when I was there. And so there was a discipleship group leader for each group, and each group probably had like 3 rooms combined. And then each group had an assistant discipleship group leader. So you had all these leaders throughout all these dormitories making sure that their rules were enforced. And just so I don't have to, I guess, repeat too much, I mean, they had basically the same rules as the IFB, strict rules around clothing, gender roles, sexuality, music, media, where you even like even where you could go to church. So with that environment, very structured, very regimented. So again, so part of the culture, you're a college student taking these college classes and you're part of these discipleship groups that meet several nights a week. We also had chapel several days a week during the day. I think it was, like, from 11 to, like, 11:35, where it was just, like, singing songs, prayer worship, and then we all had to recite the BJU creed every time we did chapel, which is so creepy even,
Yeah,
like
that's
yeah.
messed up.
Yeah, even the first time, like, when we did it, just, like, chills went all over my body, and that's in the Surviving Bob Jones podcast. I have that in the intro of each episode of just the monotone reciting of this creed, and it's just basically that creed, it goes over just the fundamentals of what they believe. And you had to say it. You had to at least say you believe that creed to even go to the college, and you were supposed to participate in saying it, and I remember the president, during the time I was there, petted. I remember him telling a story of when they were saying the creed, that he saw someone in the crowd who wasn't saying the creed, and he went and followed them afterwards and asked them why they weren't saying the creed. So, yeah, so there was if you were not saying the creed, again, you weren't conforming. And so, again, in cultic groups, if you are straying in any way from what they teach or do or act or feel, again, you're seen as a danger. You're not seen as one of them, or maybe you're someone that needs to be like disciplined or realigned with the group or whatever. But yeah, the conformity was just such a big part of it. And again, they talked about like authority. Authority was a big part of the IFB, also a big part of Bob Jones always obeying authority no matter what. And so yeah, so discipleship groups, chapel, and then we were also required to attend a list of BJU approved churches. And so I can't remember how long the list was, but you had to choose from the list and you could request to go outside the list, but they had to approve or disapprove it. Most of the time, anything outside their list, they of course disapproved of. And so, yeah, you were required to go to 2 church services a week, and so they would clear out the dorms to do that every Sunday. And, oh yeah, I forgot to mention with chapel, when we're in chapel, our rooms are being checked. We had to clean them, like, several days. I can't remember how many days they were checked, like 3 to 4 days of the week. And there were times that they would go through your stuff just to make sure, like, you did not have anything that was not approved. So there's a major lack of privacy. And another element of the control of the culture is a very surveillance type culture. They had this snitching system in place where if you saw someone breaking a rule and you did not report them, you were just as guilty as they were for reporting or for going against that rule. So there is this culture of, oh, now all the students are now watching me. If I go outside this, then they'll report me or I'll get in trouble. So just trying so hard to conform to these standards, fear of being found out or getting in trouble or not being good enough. This very performance based, authoritarian, very much very authoritarian. Let's see if I look at my notes a little bit to make sure I'm covering it well. Let's see. Yeah, so it was all about, and again, BJU thought their way was the only way. If you believed you were following God's way, you would automatically align with all their rules and their expectations. And there's just part of what I learned through doing the podcast, Surviving Bob Jones and Beyond BJU, because I asked Dr. Camille Lewis, who has done so much research and documentation of Bob Jones University. And I was asking her, I was like, what makes Bob Jones University different from these like other Christian colleges? And she said, what's different is that there is just loyalty that is just expected and ingrained when you go to Bob Jones, being this loyalty to them that she hasn't seen at other Christian colleges before. And so and that's one of the reasons so many people are afraid to talk about Bob Jones University and their experiences. They've had all kinds of scandals throughout the year. There was sexual abuse claims, like mishandling of sexual abuse claims scandal in the early 2010s that made it to the New York Times. And that's a whole other area, and people can hear about that in the Surviving Bob Jones podcast and issues around LGBTQ and race and other things. But yeah, it is just in this environment that's very authoritarian. There's very much surveillance. It's all about so much conformity, and it is just exhausting. And again, if this system is harming you, like, you're not allowed to even question that, like, you're the issue, and there was no legitimate mental health assistance at this school either. They had biblical counseling, which wasn't really counseling at all, it was about blaming the person. It was getting the person to basically admit how awful and sinful they are, and then just to realign with the belief system. And on the Beyond BJU podcast, I interviewed a dorm counselor who's told me a story of Bob Jones kicking out a student just because they tried to take their own life. So it's just there's so much also like just lack of love and care in that environment too, even though they claim to be about love, but that's kind of a quick overview of that environment.
honestly.
Yeah.
No, great. And then the very important question before we leave the people, how did you escape IBF/Bob Jones University?
Yeah, so I ended up getting expelled from Bob Jones my senior year, and it was through an interview I did online, just sharing my experiences of what I had processed at that time with the trauma from the environment as a queer person, and I discovered the term religious trauma, which is the first term that I had found. I didn't realize at that point that I was in a cult, but that was empowering to me of be like, "Hey, like, this system is harming me. This is the impact that I've seen so far." And it's has been devastating on my life, and it's hurting other people, and other people being harmed and suffering in silence, and it's not okay, and it needs to stop, and so just finding my own voice and speaking out against that was so empowering, and I was expelled for that, and that was just me sharing my own story. And when I got out and something there's so much more. There's so many different aspects to my story, which is why I'm writing a memoir, so many interlocking pieces, but I had connected with a family secretly outside of the Bob Jones world while I was there, and they ended up, like, getting me out and honestly, like, really saving my life. Like, I don't think I would be here at all if I had never met them. But yeah, I got out and began this journey of understanding, unpacking what I had been through, processing on this healing journey, and then realizing that, oh, like I grew up in a cult and this school is also a cult. And going on a path of I want to expose all these things that need to come to light, the harm that it's done, and really help stop people from going to this school that has always tried to put this shiny, happy, perfect image and show a lot of the horrible things that have happened and continue to happen at this school and how it's impacted survivors. And I think that is such an important part of that healing journey is finding that voice and that empowerment. But yeah, I was expelled for speaking up about my experiences, coming out and just denouncing their way of life.
I'm glad that you got out,
Yeah,
honestly.
me too. Oh my gosh. I know, because before that happened, I had this like several long year like plan of this is how I'm gonna slowly inch my way out and leave because it just was so scary and just seems so hard or and at times nearly impossible to leave that kind of environment.
Yeah, I definitely know the feeling, at least with me, my mom, and an article, I guess. First, Sarah Berman's article, and then my mom were keys in getting me, at
Mm,
least, out because no logic, at least. Actually, yeah, my personal experience and those I've heard from, you kinda lose logic when you're in there, and logic doesn't exist. It might seem like it does, just like, at least from the cult I'm from, they say, "Yeah, this is logically how to do it, and here is spiritual. We combine both together." And I know sometimes they play that. Some other cult
yeah.
leaders from the past and present play on that too of here's some logic, even though it's just insanity. Here you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get the feeling. And it's good to also hear from others that have same experiences. It's pretty
It
cool.
does.
Even if
Yeah.
they're different settings, it's still the
Yeah.
same experience regardless.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And now we are going to end it. So thank you for being here, Andrew. And if you like the content, please like, subscribe, and pay attention for when I actually start doing it podcast style. I will keep everyone up to date. And if you want to go check out Andrew's podcast and more, it will be in the description. And if you want to learn about the book that he brought up a couple times, which I'll ask him for the link, that will also be down below. And embrace your truth, tell your story. I have a story to tell, you have a story to tell.
Yeah.
So let's all tell our stories.
Yes. Love it.
Till next week on Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode with many more to come. If you'd like to help support and grow the podcast and even the YouTube channel, please not only follow, like, subscribe, but please leave a review on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to this podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Until next week on Wednesday at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Peace. Catch you later.